we're going, we don't need roads.
I'm going to jump into this. You know what's it's interesting as I'm watching this movie. I feel like for as much as we learn about Johnny, I feel like there's still so much that we don't find out. There's a moment in the movie that's hinted that he's sort of risen from the dead before, and this isn't the first time he's gone on a killing spree. I'm sort of curious, what sort of decisions did you make about him? Any sort of fun backstories that you came up with yourself that maybe we as an audience never actually find out?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of little elements in there, and it's funny you mentioned that too because the filmmakers themselves, Chris and Peter and Shannon, they all kind of refer to it almost as a this installment is almost a sequel in of itself, being the first film itself though. But yeah, for Johnny, one of the things that I kind of threw in there, I watched a lot of animal attack videos, specifically bear attacks, because it was something that Chris talked about, and there's an analogy in the film itself, and I just felt like it was something that could be implemented with the character to just kind of have this viciousness, from changing from the walking and this pace that kind of sets the tone for the film, and then switching into this kind of wild animal mentality. That was kind of one thing that I added in there that I thought would add something to it.
That's awesome. Years back, when I interviewed Kane Hodder, he told me that when he played Jason, he used to keep his distance from the kids, the actors who played the victims, because it made his presence scarier whenever they actually had to film those scenes. I'm sort of curious, what was your relationship with the actors who eventually you go on to kill on screen?
I actually and I'm a huge fan of Kane Hodder. I mean, he's brilliant. The way he plays Jason, it's one of a kind. Um, I tried doing the same thing actually when we came in. I tried keeping my distance, just to kind of add to the mystique of who this guy was behind the mask, and the other actors, not knowing them. Just if it can add it, if it can help anything, I thought that might be something. And for the first block of shooting, I really did try to keep my distance and not really get to know them, and not let them really get to know me. But over the course of the time, they're such great people. We all kind of became fast friends after the first couple weeks of shooting and being out in the woods in the middle of nowhere, just fighting off the black flies and mosquitoes.
Well, you mentioned, the mask. Obviously, for any killer in this genre, the moment that they find and put on that mask is a seminal moment. I think most people forget that Jason doesn't get his hockey mask until part three. I'm sort of curious, what was it like finally getting to put Johnny's mask on? And did that moment, does that mask, does that prop sort of give you anything that maybe you weren't expecting to be able to add to your performance?
I mean, yeah, there. I mean, and there's the moment where Johnny does walk, and he grabs the mask, and you see him for the first time. He walks out, and there's kind of this moment, and it's like it's an intentional moment, but it in the film it's like a natural moment because the light hits, and all of a sudden Johnny stops, and it's just kind of this like he's got the mask on for the first time. So personally, and being a big fan of the Friday franchise, and slasher films and horror in general, it was just a really cool moment too, that I'm so glad that they took that moment to kind of give that shining light on the mask for the first time, that moment of him putting it on. So yeah, I mean, it added to the mystery of Johnny, and being able to be able to hide behind that, because a lot of the time before I put that mask on, I'm wearing the whole bald head piece and the rotting flesh and everything. That's a cowl. So I would have an open face and have this mask and this prosthetic on. But when you can actually hide behind a full on mask, it does add to the performance. You can kind of be another creature behind there that no one can see what you're thinking or feeling.
I have to be honest with you. One of the emotions I wasn't expecting watching this movie was to feel bad for the killer, and that like the whole time I just kept thinking like all he wants is this locket back. Like he had he had this emotional connection to this locket, and basically he's kind of like a kid who just lost something that's important to him. Do you think that if we spent more time with some of the other famous slasher killers we know and love, we would find ourselves feeling bad for them, or is Johnny just a unique case?
Maybe. I mean, like I look at that sort of as the Frankenstein's monster moment where Frankenstein's monster is much more of an empathetic character in general, just because because of everything you feel for him. But you get that moment where you connect with them and you feel for them, and then all of a sudden, Frankenstein's monster still throws the little girl into the lake, and it's still this horrible creature. And same with Johnny too. Like, you get to see him do these terrible things, and then you see his face and you kind of get that connection moment, and then he does even more horrible things after that. So I don't know if you would it depends on, I guess, depends on the creature and the character and the situation, but it does give you, yeah, I mean, there's a humanity behind every terrible creature or villain out there, and a connecting moment, and you realize, oh, there's a reasoning behind this, or not. And I think with Johnny, it gives you that moment, and it kind of gives you, it's almost a manipulation of the audience, where it gives you that moment to make you think there's a humanity behind it, and then it just switches right back into the horror.
That's fair. Well, so keeping in, because since you are a horror fan, I'd love to know, with the hook of this movie being that we're seeing this story told through the perspective of the killer, is there a great classic horror movie moment that you love personally that would be really cool to actually see it from the perspective of the villain rather than how we see it, in the way that it's presented?
I'd probably have to say the original John Carpenter's Halloween. There's so many moments in there where you see Michael Myers in the background. You see him in the car driving by. There's all these little, like, if you ever get to see that on a big screen in the theater, you pick up all these other little moments of him way in the background. So I want to see that. I'd want to see what Michael Myers is doing in that specific film in between all the scenes.
I really want to see that, the moment where Jamie Lee Curtis looks out and he's standing among the sheets and then does a double take and he's not there. I want to see him just like run off like really fast and just get out of there. I'd love to talk about the kill days, like the days when you guys have to shoot like the kill sequences. How do you approach those days differently than any other? Like, does it feel different when you walk onto a set knowing this is the day that I got to kill somebody?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, those days, for me, being the geek that I am, I get excited for it because I get to see all the prosthetics, and I get to see the process of how they're gonna piece this. It's basically a magic act, the way that they piece it together, and the way that the camera, where the shots are taking place, and how it's all coming together. So those days for me, generally, they're kind of easier for me because I'm there for little bits and pieces, and I don't have to. Sometimes I don't have to do as much. Sometimes I do more, and it depends on what the exact scene is. But yeah, no, those days are exciting for me because I just get to kind of watch the whole process and admire it, and see the magic come together.
Dude, the one without getting into details because I don't want to ruin it for people, but the one on the cliff was just as a horror movie fan. I'll cut you loose on this. We know that any good horror movie monster slasher killer never actually stays gone for long. Are there aspects of Johnny that you would love to explore further, or is this, well, let me ask, is this the kind of movie that would ever do like a part, or I guess a part two, or like a sequel?
I think it's hard to say because it is kind of designed to be like sort of like the John Carpenter's original Halloween, where that ending, that's the scary part, that they're still out there, and is kind of left that way. But then at the same time, I mean, there's umpteen sequels at this point, and I mean, if the demand's there, and there's a good idea for it, and I would love to revisit Johnny. Absolutely, I'd be back in a heartbeat. And if Chris wants to do something, I'm there for it. Yeah, I guess it just depends on what the idea is, and also it lends itself to the fact this film itself feels like it's kind of the second or third installment in something. So you could always go back and explore what happened before this, and then see what happens afterwards as well.
Where we're going, we don't need roads.